listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the drug facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the drug facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/drug facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
100 years ago, there were 100,000 tigers in the wild. Today, there are as few as 3,200. The Earth's wild animals can't speak up when they need help, but we can. Be the voice for those who have no voice. Visit worldwildlife.org.
Hi, I'm Ruth Quick from the town of Ulster. I support Kingston Community Radio, and you should too.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
Keep on. All right.
Did you guys have a good Christmas, a good New Year?
Oh yeah.
Listen, it was a little slow. It was a little slow. Everybody in my family, not my immediate family, but my associated family had COVID issues.
Oh God.
Both of my brothers had COVID.
Oh Jesus.
2 nieces, 2 nephews.
I feel left out. I haven't had it.
Don't feel left out.
So I was supposed to cook for 16 and wound up with 6.
Oh boy, you must have had a lot of turkey sandwiches left over.
Unfortunately, I wish it was turkey.
Goose?
It was a shell steak. I had a big shell that I ordered.
Oh, nice.
So I had a 13-pound shell, and I got shell coming out of my ears. You know, it became soup. It became
I bet.
Nice
everything
soup.
under the
Very
sun.
good soup.
Everybody's okay now, though?
Everybody's good. Nobody really had any
Everybody
symptoms.
had a vaccine probably, right?
Yeah. No, there were no symptoms other than, the testing positive. And
right.
We got some test kits from the town of Ulster. The town of Ulster was really great. They distributed test kits. So we got some test kits, and we tested, and everybody was good. So
good.
That was it. And I, it wasn't the traditional Christmas, and
yeah, it wasn't like normal.
No,
Hugh, what do you got there? Is that a Danielle Steele novel?
No, that's an Ian Toll.
No, we don't read Daniel Steele.
Yeah, I know. I was hoping you would say that.
This is World War II in the Pacific.
Oh, okay.
So
good.
that was one of my Christmas presents. I've already finished.
Oh, nice.
There's 3 books about the naval battles in the Pacific. Fascinating because they did the Japanese side as well. So this guy Ian Toll, who wrote these 3 books, and I recommend them. The first one's called Pacific Crucible. Absolutely fascinating inside information. Got it from letters and that were written by Japanese officers and.
He will breeze through that thing by Monday. He'll have that thing done.
He will. It took me a few more than that, 4 or 5 days, but so I'm passing it on to my fellow Navy men.
There you go.
Both.
I remember as a kid the TV series Victory at Sea, which was about the war in the Pacific.
Right.
And the music on that was just inspiring. That led me to enlist in the Navy.
Yeah, part of that was propaganda, and just like when we lost the Lexington at the Battle of Coral Sea, they somehow it disappeared. It didn't get mentioned, and when we destroyed the 4 aircraft carriers, the Japanese aircraft carriers at Midway, they only reported 2 had been sunk.
Who only reported? The
Japanese, and the other 2 they said were being repaired.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be interesting.
10,000 feet of water.
They were torpedoed to the bottom of the ocean, and the Japanese were really very upset, the destroyer captains, because they said, "How can we possibly sink aircraft carriers with Japanese torpedoes?" But Yamamoto ordered it, and so it was done. Anyway, speaking of torpedoes.
Oh, boy, nice segue, Catalano.
Speaking of torpedoes, I have the first edition here, this morning's edition of the Kingston Freeman, the Jeremy Shifless edition. I hear that Jeremy's no longer the
city editor,
and whatever, but so this is an edition.
This is the new Freeman.
Sans Jeremy, but the headline is "City Sued Over Sign Ban," and this, to me, I'm really interested in your take because I know you live in the city. I live in the town of Ulster. My road was plowed this morning, and 4 houses on the road, and we were already plowed. So, thank you, Frank Petramo. But
he's campaign manager now.
Hey, I'm not his campaign manager, but I've always been a fan of electing your highway superintendent. You'd be surprised how well your roads are maintained. Anyway, so getting back to this this suit, this is the craziest thing. I mean, I've seen some nutty stuff, but I have no idea where the relationship between government and citizenry is going, especially in the city of Kingston, because there's 3 groups, two groups: Walks for Black Lives Coalition and the Rise Up Kingston group, along with newly elected Ulster County legislator Phil Erner, Democrat of Kingston.
My legislator.
Your legislator have sued in U.S. District Court, Northern District. So this is a federal case, so to speak.
Well, they're claiming contest. Mario, give the listener a better briefing of what it is.
Oh yeah. So the suit asks the court to order that a prohibition on signs is unconstitutional, and to award compensatory damages caused by this overbroad speech restriction. So evidently, as you said earlier, there must have been some pain and suffering because people were not allowed to bring signs into a common council meeting when they, I believe, it had to do with the
Kingstonian. Yes.
So the Kingstonian rides again. So these folks wanted to bring signs to the meeting, and they were told that they weren't allowed to bring signs. Now, I see that they got a quote, somebody somewhere got a quote from the Common Council President, Andrea Shout, that indicated that she's changing the rules now. I think they're going to allow signs, but you can't have a sign on a stick because that might be considered a dangerous weapon. So the stick could be used.
So she's good with signs then.
I guess now I think that's what happened. The suit states Erner is the person who's been damaged here. It says on August 11th, the suit states Erner went to a common council meeting to protest the city's plan to install surveillance cameras throughout Kingston. Erner and other activists were told they cannot enter the meeting with protest signs, the suit states. So the plaintiffs want the policy rescinded.
So it wasn't about the Kingstonian. It was about this, surveillance cameras.
Okay, so as of Thursday, that's yesterday, the sign is down. So that policy evidently has been rescinded. So anyway, it says, the New York Civil Liberties Union had sent a letter to the Common Council and its Corporation Council in August protesting the move. At the time, Common Council President Andrea Shout said after consulting with the New York Conference of Mayors, the council would not allow any signs displayed on sticks or any object that can be used as a weapon. So I guess evidently that was that's the sum and substance of it. I'm not sure exactly what type of damages are being claimed here, but evidently Phil is seeking compensatory damages because, I don't know, was he damaged in some way? Because
he apparently feels he was denied his right, his constitutional right of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and the way some people express themselves is they signs, and that's very common. But I think this is a little more nuanced in that the judge will probably review the question, or address the question of whether a municipality within its own municipal chambers can make rules that restrict, in this case, according to the plaintiffs, that restrict their First Amendment rights. I think if the council had said no one can speak here, that would be a different level. You mentioned that the council president. Amazing. This happened back in August, and we're just getting to it in January. The council president had rescinded the rule, so now signs are allowed.
Well, the signs
without sticks.
Down. And so apparently the signs have been removed. So I would assume that the rule has been.
Well, these folks bring the signs with them to express their opinion, and they take the signs home.
No,
so what do you mean by the signs are removed?
On the door. There was a sign on the door, and that sign said you can't bring a sign into the meeting.
So now you can.
Well, the sign's down, so evidently you can.
So what's the sense of a lawsuit?
Well, they had 6 months of pain and suffering. There was a lot of agony. I thought Phil was actually running for the legislature during this period of time.
Yeah, I thought Phil. Yeah,
he's a busy guy.
He's a busy guy. I thought Phil should have run for alderman, and he probably would have been elected. And
because
the notion of a public official suing his own city, in this case, Erner suing the city of Kingston, which he represents a third of it.
Yeah.
Although and it might be City Hall too, which is ironic in a sense.
Yeah.
Because that district is my district, and I think I know it fairly well. But the notion of a public official suing a city is not unprecedented. Mm-hmm. It happens. I have to go back 40 years before I find anything relevant. But there was a case, not even a case. There was a case with Alderman at Large Gallo, who was the father of 2 mayors.
Yeah. And
he was in office at the time. And there was a really horrific accident at the junction of Vauxhall and East Chester Street coming into Kingston down that steep hill. A cement truck, a fully loaded cement truck, lost its brakes at the top of the hill, and the light was on flashing. It had malfunctioned, so they had it on flashing, which is common now, but was not then. And the truck, it was a horrible accident. The truck plowed into a car with two elderly people in it. And I won't go into the graphic details, but it was pretty awful. This happened about 10 o'clock in the morning. At noontime, Alderman at Large Gallo was on the radio accusing the city of neglect by failing to maintain the traffic light and blah, blah, blah. And at about 10 minutes after noon, the Corporation Counsel, Aaron Klein, was on the telephone to Gallo and said, "What the hell are you doing here? We're going to have to defend against a massive lawsuit, and you're telling the jury already that we're negligent.
Yeah, we're guilty."
Yeah. So this is early in Erner's term, quite early. It's only 2 weeks into January. But
today's January 7th.
Yeah.
He's got a week on the job.
A week on the job, and he's suing the city. Yeah.
And he wants damages. That's even worse.
I don't understand what the damages might be. The pain and suffering of not being able to carry your sign into the legislature.
He was still allowed to speak, but evidently he felt that his speech maybe wasn't as effective without the graphics.
It could be.
So he's got a lawsuit going now. How long do you think it'll take us to find out what actually happens here?
Oh, the judge will. The alderman as a body filed an action with the state attorney general, James, a year ago now. Accusing the mayor, not accusing, but raising questions about the mayor.
She's too busy issuing subpoenas to the Trump family members to be bothered with some local graft and corruption.
Not to get into this Trumpism, but I guess it'll be over our heads for a while. But I find when I saw James on television announcing these subpoenas, I kind of felt bad for her. She seemed diminished. She was once one of the leading candidates for governor of the state, and in many eyes, the leading candidate. Letitia James coming out of New York City with her reputation and her position.
Oh, and the local Democrats were lined up.
They were
like
lined up around
soldiers.
the corner. Yeah, like toy soldiers.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she's out for reasons that nobody believed. She's out. She's back at the office suing Donald Trump. It's
because he's a great foil. He
is the foil.
And there are so many politicians that are trying to build their reputations on the back of taking on one of America's 10 most hated, and so they see this. It's unfortunate because it's completely wrong. I don't care who you are. I'm no fan of Trump's, as you know.
Well, not anymore.
I never was.
Okay.
I actually voted for the guy from Ohio in the primary.
Okay.
But the problem, is this using the office of a prosecutor to exact political revenge, and I just find that to be terribly wrong.
Well, if Trump, in fact, and hopefully the facts on this will come out through the judicial process, did some of the things that she's accusing him of, and these are nothing more than accusations at this point, subpoenas. He should be held accountable. He did some his business practices even before he was a politician were questionable, but he operates in a shark tank that they call New York City real estate, and undoubtedly there are far worse abuses of the system that never get addressed. It's a cost of doing business.
One of the things that were in my eyes, James has zero credibility, is the fact that one of the biggest scams I've ever seen and most people have ever witnessed went untouched because it was Hillary's foundation. And nobody has ever investigated how much of that foundation money was actually spent on personal benefit to the foundation officers. And they would owe the government probably everything they have in back taxes, because she had her whole campaign staff on the foundation payroll. They were flying, private jets all over the world, for parties, this, that, and never investigated. And that's why I find it difficult to put any type of credibility on this investigation of Trump. I just, as you said, this is a way of life in New York City with real estate developers estimating and sometimes underestimating or overestimating the values of their properties. I would venture to say in the city of Kingston, there are investors and commercial properties that are grossly underassessed. And yet, where's Letitia? I mean, what's good for Trump should be good for everybody. And this is, in my opinion, nothing more than a political stunt. Let me keep my name in front of the electorate. And going forward, I'll just keep bringing Trump people in, and that gets headlines. It's always a headline. If she subpoenas Joe Blow, the real estate tycoon, in Buffalo, who cares? So and she's using it essentially as in my opinion, a publicity stunt. And I personally, I think it's going to hurt her, because when it happens is I think people start to get the impression that maybe you're not a prime time player. She hasn't elevated herself to acting gubernatorially, and Hochul did. To her credit, this woman who wasn't even allowed in the Capitol, she probably spent, she was allowed to maybe drive by the governor's mansion every once in a while and wave to him. She stepped up to the plate and became, pretty.
Became the governor.
Yeah, she I think got into this and did some good. So. Anyway, we don't want to beat that one up too badly. I have
save something for Gerry.
Yeah, and folks, we're at 331-9255, talking politics today. 331-9255. Give us a shout if you agree, disagree, or you have a question. Anything in the political realm, we're open for. We're not talking about Giants or Jets. We're not talking football here, but we are going to talk politics.
Let's talk newspapers a little bit. I feel sorry for the sports writers who have to cover not one but two lousy teams in New York, and not just an off season and not just a rebuilding season, but chronically terrible. What's it? One of them's got 4 wins this year.
They both have 4 wins.
Do they?
Yeah, maybe the Jets have 5, but between them, they don't
have 10.
Yeah, no, they don't have 10 wins between them.
Yeah, and they got like 25 losses.
And this is after 32 games.
I mean, I've been a sports writer. I've been a reporter, sports writer in that case, and it's fun covering a winning team. Everybody's interested. They can't wait for the next game. The enthusiasm is up there. And about halfway through the season, people realize, the fans, realize that these guys are going nowhere, and yet as a writer, as a sports writer, you got to keep it going.
Yeah.
I would have these teams to the back of the sports page, with maybe a picture, and then tune in next week and see how bad they are. But they plaster them across. You like they're headed for the playoffs.
And we have a connection here to the Giants because Dave Gettleman, their general manager, was, I believe, coached Kingston High School football.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
and he was a local guy, and I mean, I'm not sure he grew up here, but he lived here for a short period of time while he was working for the school district, and but they say that he's not gonna make it past the end of the season. So I think they're already shopping for a new general manager. I mean, his track record is the third worst in football as a general manager. His one loss ratio is the third worst.
You mean in history?
In current GMs.
Wow.
The one in Jacksonville was the worst. I think Detroit second, and then come the Giants.
That's bad. That's bad company.
And what I feel bad for is the fans, because they pay a king's ransom, first of all, for seats, rights to the seats, and then all that it entitles you to. It's like joining Sam's Club.
Yeah.
You pay a fee so that you can shop there. Well, now you pay the Giants a fee so that you can buy season tickets. I'm like, holy moly!
If you can get them.
Yeah, and it's expensive, and the product that they're putting on the field is I don't know. It's probably inferior in many different respects. And again, they've had some injuries, and
everybody's got injuries.
Yeah.
As I understand it,
they had some COVID,
except for kickers in the NFL. Everybody gets injured to some degree. Everybody.
Oh yeah. Well, the average life expectancy in
3.5 years.
A running back, I think, is 3 or 3.5 years. Same with wide receivers. There's very few of them that last more than 5 years. I mean, that's a heck of a lousy career when you think about it. You can't possibly make enough money to support yourself.
In 3 years.
In 3 years. Yeah, I don't care how much they're paying you.
And you come out of it, in many cases,
battered and bruised.
A cripple for life.
I remember when Bart Oates came up to Wiltwick to play golf with Duke Seminoff, and Phil Simms and Bart Oates came up. Duke had some relationship to them. Oates, who was a lineman, couldn't walk. The man couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. That's how bad
probably 30 years old.
His legs were.
Yeah.
He was, maybe in his late 30s. Had retired maybe 10 years or so.
Yeah.
They had to drive him around on the golf cart, take him out to his car on the golf. I mean, it was awful.
Yeah.
It was. You saw it. He's like a terrible. But
Phil Simms, one of those talking heads that at halftime you got 5 guys fighting for 5 minutes of airtime, and they were going around a circle. It was called a highlight show, and they're showing clips from the first half of these games, and the guys are sensational athletes, and they came to Phil Simms, and he typically did the Giants.
Yeah.
And he looked into the camera, and the score was 3-3 at halftime. And he looked into the camera and said, "There were no highlights." And that characterized the Giants season.
Yeah.
There were no highlights in it.
There were no highlights.
30 minutes of football, there were no highlights.
Anyway, so I was reading your blog yesterday. I thought it was excellent.
Thank you.
And I don't know if our listening audience is aware of the fact that you do a blog, Hugh Reynolds Blogspot, right? We'll find it. They can Google Hugh Reynolds, and I'm sure your blog will show up somewhere in the top 10. I think it's great. It's a great blog. They could
Mario, if I may interrupt for a moment, if there's some listeners out there who are awake and alert, I've had some transmission issues with the blog in the last 2 or 3 weeks, going back to Christmas, and it wasn't or it isn't getting out there to its regulars, and it's sporadic. Some people get it, some people don't, and I've been with a lot of help from like grandchildren
Yeah.
We're the only people who seem to understand how these things work. Trying to figure this out along with the company that transmits the log, and it's been most frustrating to deal with a modern a conglomerate like Google. You can't talk to people anymore.
No.
You can't pick up the phone and discuss your issues. It's not getting fixed. We hope to get it fixed. It has to do with fundamentally. It has to do with there are now two domains. There was the original HughReynoldsBlog.com, and then when the domain expired and we renewed it, it became a second domain. There's two out there. The second domain is Hugh-Reynolds-blog. There, it might as well be Mario Catalano-blog because they're entirely different addresses, as it were. It would be like you changed your address on your house. You wouldn't get your mail, and it does run, however, in its entirety, very lightly edited by the editors at The Wire every week, which I believe posts on The Wire itself, posts on Thursdays.
I believe it's twice a week.
Is it
They
twice?
do twice a week now. Yeah, I believe Mondays and Thursdays.
Yeah, like me. I do twice a week. Although, so.
Yeah,
It's
you can
in-
get it there, and that's a very decent.
Not that I.
Shoulders over the Freeman.
Well, that's not a very high bar, unfortunately. But there's some good. Too bad there aren't more of them reporters over there. But they're on a pretty tight budget, and they're in a fundraising thing. But the Wire is a good. It's a newspaper online, a digital newspaper, which I wouldn't be surprised if the Freeman went to that in short order. Just stop publishing its print edition.
Yeah,
I mean, the
wow.
circulation is a fraction of what it was 10 years ago. It's probably 7,500, and when not that I drew all that circulation, but when I was there, when I left in 2008, it was. Daily was about 20,000. Sundays was 25,000.
So they're down about 60-70%.
Yeah, it's
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but they don't cover anything live. So if there's a common council meeting on a Monday, it doesn't get reported until Wednesday. Yeah. They don't work after hours. Sports, forget. They have the worst reporting of local sports.
Well, you got that extra day in there, and that's all about where the printing press is. They don't have printing presses on site, and they haven't had for a number of years. The paper's printed in Troy, I believe.
Wow.
And so if a common council meeting gets over at 7:30 or 7 o'clock, see it.
Yeah.
You don't get it, or a baseball game.
All right, folks, we're at 331-9255. Save some questions for our guest at 8 o'clock. We have Professor Benjamin calling in, Gerry Benjamin. We're going to talk some state and national politics with him, maybe some local stuff.
I thought you were talking about Gerry Benjamin, the cop.
No.
We could get him too.
Get two Benjamins.
Two Benjamins.
We're going to have a double Benjamin affair. So anyway, let me get back to yesterday. I believe your lead article in your blog was about, I think it was entitled, "Where is Carol Smith?" So just for the education of the public, does anybody even know who Carol Smith is? Because I have to tell you, I asked my wife, and she didn't know who Carol Smith was. So, and she's pretty alert and involved.
She keeps up. Yeah, she keeps up.
But you never hear from Carol. Carol's like, buried somewhere.
Well, some of it has to do with the way the executive departments are run in government, and not just this one. Andrew Cuomo was infamous for taking all the credit. And if it did hit the fan, well, then the department head.
Yeah, that's when you heard from the department head.
Yeah, that's when you heard, Zucker. Was it Zucker or Zuckerman, the health commissioner? Zucker, who apparently was a good administrator, respected in his field, but This thing with politicians announcing health policy or running it, it would appear that the executive is running the health department.
Every day he's doing is actually you would have thought he might have learned from Trump and Cuomo, who were out in front of this COVID thing nonstop, and took ownership of the problem, and then paid the price. So you would think that, but I'm afraid he can't resist because there's a pronouncement today.
Well, what else is going on in county government? And there are other things going on, obviously, some very big things. But the drumbeat is COVID, and every day there seems to be an announcement. Certainly, every other day, some kind of an announcement coming out of the executive without a word from the health department.
Yeah, and here's my question, and I don't know if. I actually haven't researched this, so I don't have the answer to this. Maybe Professor Benjamin can help us with this. But our county executive declared a state of emergency a month ago.
And then renewed it.
But here's the thing. You renewed a state of emergency that was so ineffective that we have about 10 times as much COVID now as before you instituted the state of emergency. So my question is, what was the purpose of the state of emergency?
Yeah, that's
and then what elements of the state of emergency were there, and how are they designed to reduce the impact of the COVID epidemic? Because they failed miserably. So. And of course, the announcement never mentions this, but we're going to renew this because this policy that is a disaster, that has done nothing. This policy has done nothing. We now have we're breaking daily records, but because of that, we're going to renew an ineffective policy. That was my takeaway. Tell me what is the state of it? Is anybody out there? If anybody out there knows. We're certainly not going to hear from county government, but if anybody else knows what this state of emergency, quote unquote, was designed to do, share it with us. Let us know. Otherwise, just don't renew something that's so ineffectual. That's my takeaway.
I can't argue with that.
You can't argue with it.
You've done it again, Dr. Catalano.
No, here's the thing. He's the only one with a state of emergency. There's no state of emergency in Orange County, no state of emergency in Dutchess County,
right.
No state of emergency in Greene County. They're doing just as well or just as badly as we are.
Or the same, right.
So what the hell does this state of emergency do? Other than headlines. Oh, I'm declaring.
Or other than keep restaurants closed or no one going there. People are scared to go out of the house.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And then the other thing is, this is a question for Benjamin that I intend to pose to him. Where in the charter does it allow a county executive or our county executive to declare a state of emergency? Where was that authority? Where did the authority to declare a state of emergency and make unilateral decisions? Where in the charter is that provision?
There is the power I am given, and there is the power that I take. That's where it is.
Okay, so it's in the latter. It's in the power that I take.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there's not a single legislator, 23 legislators,
Yep.
who even comment on it.
Well, to say that our legislators are a major disappointment would be...
Institutionally.
I think we should declare a state of emergency to find out if these people are even alive. Can we have a state of emergency?
We got to resuscitate some of them.
Okay, so listen,
while you open that, we got a caller?
Oh, good. Yes, good morning, caller.
Hey, guys, good morning. Your show is enjoyable, I got to tell you. But
Thanks.
I just want to congratulate both of you on the last show that you had of 2021 when you had Jim Quigley on. It was a wealth of information, and Jim is one of these guys that, the buck stops with him, and he's not afraid to put it out there, good or bad. But my follow-up is, hopefully you'll have Jim back on numerous occasions, but my follow-up is that when you had talked, that there was a good possibility that you were going to try to get James Shaughnessy on, and you were going to try to get the BOCES superintendent on. And I just wanted to mention, I hope you guys are going after these two people. And in the interim, I noticed that Mr. Shaughnessy had wrote an article to the Freeman in regards to the Kingstonian. There's some things going on under the table, and it's not transparent. So I think if he's going to write a letter to the Freeman, that he should get on and he should explain what these differences are so that people have a good understanding. And I'll leave it with that. I'm sure you and Mario, the both of you have seen the article that he wrote to the Freeman.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was certainly taken aback by that. I started to read it. I said, and I know Shaughnessy, and I think he's an honest broker. But to put those accusations out there, and not even just blank accusations that there is chicanery going on. First, I got to the end of it, and I said, what's this? I think some of that is on the Freeman. They accept a letter to the editor, publish it verbatim like they do everything else, and don't even question it. I mean, somebody at the Freeman might make the case that the letters to the editor are the voice of the people. However, when you accuse people of malfeasance in this case, you ought to have something to back it up.
Actually, it should have gone beyond being a letter to the editor because he's a public figure. And that should have been a follow-up story.
He's president of the school board.
Absolutely, that should have been a follow-up story.
Yeah, you're right, Mary.
And this is interesting. So, what do you got to say? And give us some details. And you're absolutely right. I also was very, should I say, surprised by the fact that he came forward. He has something to say and not say at the same time. So I'd like to know what's going on.
I think by rule the president, excuse me, the president of the school board speaks for the school board. He or she is the spokesperson. In this case, the school board, I believe, is on board with this as a body. Is on board with this Kingstonian project. So in that case, he's not speaking for the school board, although his name is on a letter, so he's speaking for himself. I think he was in the minority on that vote.
I think the caller's got a great thought, though. Perhaps we can get him on the next show, and we'll spend some time on the next show on the Kingstonian. What do you think?
Well, thinking out loud, I'd like to see both. I'm not, as a journalist, I'm not particularly. I want to see. I like to see both sides. I mean, obviously, but I like to see both sides face to face, because otherwise you're playing ping pong with these people. One guy says something, the other guy refutes it. You go back and forth, back and forth. Typically, when these in a controversy where these opponents are sitting across the table like we are from each other, a lot of that crap gets filtered out very quickly because both sides know the arguments. All the arguments.
You're not going to get away with anything.
No, absolutely nothing. And by a happy coincidence, some truth and facts emerge that both sides will probably agree on. Yeah. So my caveat would be, we can have either one on if we can get them. People for some reason don't seem to so eager to come on to our show because we like to ask questions and.
It's not
informed questions. I would say
they're not going to be. We're not throwing softballs here.
Spitballs. We got spitballs here.
Yeah. So thanks, caller. See what we can do about that. And then we also should address this BOCES issue. Maybe we can have somebody call in from BOCES to explain what their status is, whether they're going ahead with their construction project, whether they're considering moving over to the old Tech City, the new I-87, the I-87 Park. Whatever. Sure.
We're on it. We're on it, caller. Thank you.
Yeah. We're gonna beat somebody up there. Not sure who. So I have another question of you, because you have been following this stuff forever. 2 budgets were passed: the Kingston budget, the county budget. Both of them are bloated with sales tax. So people are spending all of that money that the government's printing and driving up sales tax, and it's astronomical, and that's even even in the absence of having
car sales.
Yeah. So this is and as a consequence, quite a few people have been hired in both operations.
That number seems to be a moving target. I believe when it was initially announced that in October by Executive Pat Ryan, that he was going to restore the jobs that they had eliminated through various ways, retirement, et cetera, about 120, which out of a workforce of 1,300 is
10%.
10%. Hello, and the latest number coming out of the county comptroller, she issued a report. We can touch on that a little bit too. Was 60.
60. Okay.
So it is the latest number. So maybe it is 60, but
or maybe they're still hiring.
That's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That you mean that was that long line that circled the county office building?
Yeah. So my question is, you've been around. Is this sustainable? I mean, do we just hire and fire and hire and fire? I mean, if you needed these people, you needed to keep them or replace them. If you don't need them, then why are you putting them back on the payroll? And there seems to be a terrible aversion, other than in Dutchess County, but there seems to be a terrible aversion to actually lowering property taxes. I just got my property tax bill, county and town, and it's double what it was 10 years ago, maybe more.
Yeah.
And how about just cutting us taxpayers a break here? Once they've got that money, boy, they just refuse to give it back. It's like, this is our money and not your money, and we're all in this together. I mean, it's everybody's money, and can you cut some of these folks? You hear nonstop about we don't have affordable income, people can't afford to live here. It isn't only the price of the property, it's the taxes. It's it's also the property taxes that make it difficult for people on limited incomes to be able to afford to
live. When someone buys a home, like we have, there's the banks. There's I think three components that it is the purchase price. Obviously, it's your job whether you can make the mortgage payments, and it's the taxes. And I've talked to realtors about that, and that is the bottom line. And they get to the taxes, and the homeowner or the prospective homeowner can afford to pay for the house.
Yeah.
But the couple, for instance, they don't make enough to pay the taxes. I don't know if that's going to happen. Whether taxes are going to be taxes per se, property taxes are going to be reduced. I think they're going to be held level. They're not going to give that back.
Yeah.
And I think the main reason that the guy in Dutchess, Mark Molinaro, I think, and I'm being a little cynical here, is that he's cutting taxes by 10%, is that he's running for Congress. Maybe they should all run for Congress.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care what the excuse. He was able to balance his budget and still return some money to the taxpayers these folks here are hiding money all over the place. This is like, they've got rooms full of cash that they're just stashing, and it makes life easier next year. I can look like a hero. I don't have to raise taxes. And they think that not raising taxes is a victory, when in fact we're already being taxed at a very high level. And they should now start concentrating. And by the way, I'm not necessarily blaming the executive for this, because the county legislature had every ability to just go in there and say, we're going to reduce the amount that is generated by property taxes, and we're going to give people a 2% tax break or a 3% tax break. They easily could have afforded it. There are two problems that I see with that. Number one is I do not think that the county legislators actually know how much money there is. and number two, they don't have the backbone to stand up to the exec and say, listen, you've got tons of money here. If you can hire 120 people, we have a really good idea. Just hire 50, and let's take the salaries of those other 75, cut it out of the budget, and give the money back to the people. They could have done that. There's nobody on that legislature with any backbone whatsoever who is actually protecting their constituents. They all talk a good fight, but they're not putting their money where their mouth is. My money where their mouth is.
I think they approved the executive's budget somewhere around the 99% level, which is typical of the budget that they received.
Yeah.
So I think they call that a rubber stamp. Segueing into the legislature itself, they're meeting on Tuesday, I think, on the 10th.
Oh, yeah.
And they will formally elect a chairperson. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about this, who that person might be. It appears to be Tracy Bartles of Gardner, who was chair for
independent caucus. She's a non-enrolled.
That says, to me, reading tea leaves here, that says something about dissension in the Democratic caucus, which is substantial now. They got 16, including her, so they have 15 Democrats.
It could have been worse. The Republicans raised a lot of money in targeted races.
You're being facetious again. You're right, Catalano. That there is such division, quietly behind the scenes, of course, division in the Democratic Party that they have to elect, or they can only decide to, they can only agree to elect a non-member.
A non-member and a non-Democrat.
I'm surprised Phil Erner didn't get elected chair, but
yeah, well, he was too busy. He had his lawsuit going on against the city where he lives, and.
But anyway, this is a tidbit that reporters look at these things. The Freeman Fani catches up with the notion that there's going to be a new chairman next week, and so they run Tracy Bartles across the top of the page with a kind of with a headline. It appears that Bartles is going to be the new chairperson. All right, well, I was writing that a couple of weeks ago, but And it's pretty much announced by the majority leader, who has been reelected by his caucus, Hepner from Woodstock, who himself might have been a chairman candidate, one of several, I think. Bartles was not available for comment. Now, I've worked with Bartles over the years, and she's unique among her colleagues in that.
Usually accessible, right?
Exactly, more than accessible. She'll call up reporters, particularly if it's an article that some area that she's working on in the legislature, and either embellish the story or correct it. And I'm not sure. Don't save this tape, but I'm not sure she's a lock for this thing.
Yeah.
Going back to ancient history, when Phil Sinaga stood in the doorway, with his acceptance speech in a manila envelope.
His victory party.
His victory party, which I went to.
Yeah.
In which nobody was there. He was that close to being chairman, and it didn't happen on the floor. It didn't happen. So, not to wish any ill will to Tracy Bartles, who I think would be an excellent chairman.
Yeah.
She will address issues that the rest of them will not, like solid waste, for instance.
Yeah. They've got a problem, and they just keep kicking the can down the road on that.
I think they want to kick the can downstairs or upstairs to the executive. And maybe that's where it ought to be. Say what you will about Ryan, on the things that he cares about, that he's dedicated to, he will act on those things. And there's a whole list of he's a very proactive executive. This guy doesn't sit in the office and look out the window.
Nope. I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment, and I just think that if you're going to call a state of emergency, at least do something effective.
I mean, as an example of Ryan's, we'll see this in the ads when he runs for re-election or whatever he does run for next time.
There won't be any ads. There won't be any opponent.
Well, there is that too, but I'm amazed, quite frankly, that they put this IBM deal together the way they did. That Ryan and his crew, and his economic development people, recruited these guys. They saw the problem. They perceived a solution, and they addressed it. They went down there, from what I've read about it and heard about it, the people who were doing this thing were quite skeptical at first. They understood, because they'd done that kind of project down at IBM in Fishkill. They understood what the logistics were, what the problems were, and they were pretty much shaking their heads, saying, well, we really don't need to get involved in this thing.
But he sold it.
He sold it.
His group sold it.
His group sold it. And
I think he's a very bright guy. My biggest issue is that it's actually the people that he has surrounded himself with, who I think are a little, should I say, disingenuous in terms of being forthcoming.
Yeah.
And that he could actually be the people's executive. I think that's how good he is and how his personality is. But he's got a combination of leftover people from the previous administration, where there was a moat around the county office building.
There still is.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, because that's how they were comfortable operating, and I think a lot of that moved into the new administration. I think it's improved, but I don't think it's as good as it could be. I think he could be a lot closer to the folks and his constituency than he actually is. I think they actually prevent him from doing that. The people, and
he's very carefully
to control.
He's very carefully managed his public persona. And fairly typically of if it's good news, he's out there at the podium announcing it. If it's bad news, you have to wade through a bureaucracy that's almost
it's interesting
impossible.
Because I don't see that from either Dutchess or Orange County. Those execs are right out there on the front line. They're calling the shots. In this administration, I believe that there are people that actually call the shots for him, and that's. Or, like you say, manage him. He's much more closely managed than... Now, again, the other two execs are much more experienced politicians than he. Maybe that'll get better. Molinari's been in office since he was 18. And
he is a very definition of a career politician.
Oh, yeah, and Newhouse, he also was around for quite a while, working for RAC and whatnot. So, and I believe he was a town supervisor for a number of years, and so
I think some of it has to do with Ryan's training. He's trained to be an Army officer. That's his education, and that's the chain of command.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. Good point.
We saw it when we were in the service.
So, Tell me about the next year. Do you see any type of movement on solid waste? Do you see? COVID's with us. I think we're probably just going to start getting accustomed to having it around. I just think it's going to be a weaker and weaker and weaker until it becomes a common cold or similar to a common cold. What do you see as the big issue this year?
You want to cover this in a minute?
No, I mean, just throw it out and we'll cover it in the future.
I'll tell you what I don't want to see in terms of solid waste. I don't want to see somebody appoint a committee.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I will see. The committee. So you have a bunch of people kicking it down the road. There will be reapportionment, which for the public doesn't matter a lot, if at all, but it matters to the people whose districts are going to be adjusted, and that'll get done this year. Our state legislature will be reapportioned, and that could be a bigger deal because we've got 8 legislators. Only 2 of whom are residents of Ulster County.
Well, they carve up Ulster County. I mean, we're like the leftovers.
Exactly.
The other population bases get domiciled legislators, and
Yeah, and that's going on. Hochul's progress will be, I think, will impact us. She's already pouring money into Senator Hinchy's coffers. We'll see a lot of that.
An assemblywoman, a Democratic assemblywoman from Dutchess and Columbia counties, got $1 million for the Frederick Church estate there, Olana. $1 million for Olana. Wow.
I don't think $1 million goes too far at a lot of
that. They're spreading it around though. It sounds good.
It's
7 figures.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of that, and then some of this federal money, I think, will be coming out for incumbent Democrats, Delgado, for instance. There'll be some big, $1 million is nothing.
Yeah.
There'll be some big numbers coming out and some big projects. It's called buying votes.
Buying votes, yeah. Well, I think.
All right, we got Gerry. This is 8:00, right?
Yeah. We need to go to break.
Maxwell, calling.
Yeah.
Calling Maxwell.
All right. Well, Gerry's going to call in soon, and then I've got to do. I do this 8:00 is birthday time.
Yep.
So let's take the break, and then we'll do our birthdays. So you find him. I'll do birthdays. So anyway, it's 8:00, and it's time for our birthdays. Before we go to break.
We're going to break.
Oh, all right. We're going to break. So let's go to break.
We'll come back with birthdays and
announcements.
With Gerry Benjamin, not the cop.
Gerry, not the cop.
Okay.
Benjamin.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
We are Lions. We bring hope where it's needed, support causes that matter, change lives, change communities, change the world. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
Hi, Hi, this is Winnie from the Rosendale Seniors, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
Okay, we're back, and on the line we do have Gerry Benjamin, but before we get to Gerry, why don't we, you said there's a couple birthdays in there?
Absolutely.
Good.
It's birthday time, so we have no birthday for today, and so there's no winner today, no birthdays, but Saturday, January 8th. Please wish a happy birthday to Linda Katona from your friends at the Friendship Bible Coffee. Well, Lydia, I'm sorry, I said Linda, it's Lydia. Lydia, good morning, happy birthday tomorrow, and you, as the only entry, are the winner of the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse famous cow pie for tomorrow. You may pick that up at 62 O'Neill Street in Kingston. And, of course, that comes to you courtesy of Kingston Community Radio and the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse. And for Sunday, we have, let's see, a happy birthday to Carlton Spurl from your family and friends. Happy birthday, Carlton. That would be January 9th. We also have a happy birthday to Donat Baralt from your friends at People's Place. We hope you enjoy your special day. And the winner of the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse famous cow pie for January 9th is Carlton Spurl. Congratulations, Carlton. You may pick up your cow pie at the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse on 62 O'Neill Street in Kingston. And again, that comes to you courtesy of Kingston Community Radio and the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse. And now that we've gotten the best part of the day out of the way, we've gotten the birthdays, we put those to sleep. Good morning, Dr. Benjamin.
Hello, how are you?
We are well, sir. How are you?
I'm just fine.
Did you get any snow down south?
No snow. It's 53 degrees at the moment outside.
Oh, poor Gerry.
We are extremely, extremely jealous. It's snowing here.
How much snow did you get?
Well, it's still snowing, so we're not sure, but it looks like we're only going to get about 2 to 3 inches, maybe. 24, 25 degrees. Wet snow, though. It's wet, so, not good shoveling snow, good snowman snow. Anyway, congratulations on getting out of town, baby.
It was actually okay. There were lots of people stranded at the airport, but our flights went, so we were good.
Oh yeah, this is not a great time to fly. They've been canceling thousands of flights. I'm gonna get that speaker up here so we can hear you just a bit better. All right, there you go. Now you're closer to us. So listen, this is, we talk politics. So, Huey, what do you think? What are we going to hit them with today? We're very interested in your take on things, Gerry. One of the things I was going to ask you about, and I don't know if you have followed this or not, but about a month ago, the county executive declared a state of emergency because of the COVID epidemic, and now he redeclared the state of emergency because his first one was only for 1 month. Declared a new state of emergency. So where does the power of a county executive, because as far as my understanding of the charter, it doesn't speak to the ability to declare a state of emergency, and it also doesn't speak to what a state of emergency entails, what additional emergency powers are given to the executive during a state of emergency. Where did this come from? Did you guys anticipate this when you were doing this charter?
No, I don't believe we addressed that. I would imagine it comes from the municipal home rule law, implementing state law allowing emergency declarations under certain circumstances. That's generally applicable to counties.
Oh, it is.
So that if there's no conflict in law between state law and county law, the state law would prevail. If there's a conflict in law, we'd have to determine which law would prevail. I haven't researched this, so I can't be specific, unfortunately. But that's generally what I think.
Okay, so somewhere,
and then, so there has to be some statutory basis of the capacity to declare an emergency, and then that emergency would last. The duration is usually defined and delimited when it has to do with the governor, and as you say, had to be renewed. So by analogy, I would imagine it's similar.
By now what?
By analogy, in other words, I know that the governor, there has to be there's a statutory basis for the declaration of emergency by the executive in the state level. So I imagine at the local level, there's state law. Since there's no charter basis for it, I imagine or suspect there's a state law basis for it, but I have not researched it.
Okay. That's your homework assignment, Jer.
Guess what? Even when I was working, nobody got to do that.
Hey Gerry, do you have any books in the works?
I can't make out what you're saying. Do
you have any books in the works?
No, I've stopped writing books. I write occasional essays. I have one right now that's quite interesting about a state law that was passed was signed in October by the governor, making charter counties subject to state law and redistricting. And there's a big potential conflict between home rule under the state constitution, Article 9, and this statute. So I'm writing a little essay on that. Mostly it's for I publish it on the Benjamin Center blog, or I offer it to think tanks and others that have blogs that might want to post it.
What are the pros, Gerry? What are the pros and cons here?
Well, the pros and cons are that there'd be uniform standards for an Ulster County who has a very advanced and I think fine system of redistricting for the county legislature. So it doesn't improve the situation in every county, but it standardizes and specifies what values have to be considered and constrains partisan behavior to some degree. So that would be the good side. The bad side is home rule requires that local governments have discretion to govern themselves, and taking away their discretion has to be done with great consideration, very carefully.
Do you take a position on this, Gerry, in this essay?
Initially, I was against it, but the more I think about it, the state concern on this, and in fact, the courts have said that home rule should prevail in the case having to do with Westchester some years ago. But I'm not so sure anymore. I think that in redistricting is such an important local redistricting where it has to be done is such an important matter, and gerrymandering undermines government so much that there might be a state concern. That's the doctrine is called state concern. There might be a state concern basis for the state taking this action and preempting counties. So I went by doing the research, I went from no to maybe.
Isn't it something like the fox guarding the hen house? I mean, you've got the state, which is legendary gerrymandering for its own legislature, and they're going to be overseeing reapportionment on the local level?
You know what? You're exactly right.
That's the first time you've ever said that to me.
But Huey, I think that has to be in the essay. But if you get a good outcome, you might not want to quarrel with the process as much.
So Gerry, according to this law, if somebody doesn't like the outcome of a redistricting, for instance, for county legislature in Ulster County, they can petition the state to intervene and...
No. They can bring an action as long as they have standing. They have to be a citizen in Ulster County and vote in Ulster County and so on. They could bring an action saying that Ulster County didn't conform to the state law requirements if the law stands. So, for example, the last criterion in the law is that consideration has to be given to the administration of the elections to minimize to assure that elections are efficiently administered. But this gets to be very complex. But the 8 factors you have to consider in redistricting in the state law are rank ordered. This one first, this one second, and so on.
Yeah.
The last one has to do with administration. If you take care of administration before you take care of, say, compactness of the district or contiguity of the district, then a lawsuit can ensue and you can have that redistricting undone. With Ulster County, it's extremely hypothetical because Ulster County has a very developed and reformed process for doing this.
I would, I just on, not knowing enough about it, that I can't really make an educated decision, but I actually prefer that the local people take care of their own elections, because they can vote folks out if they don't like the result. I think I agree with you that New York State doesn't exactly have a stellar record on the.
Well, look, we created a phony reform process that doesn't work, and then we've got 2 sets of recommendations on districts from the so-called Reform Commission.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the people now running the state, the party now running the state, has tried to undo the process that we created that we called reform by constitutional amendment before we used it. And the public turned around and said, don't do that. So we have a bad process that the public's defending against the Democrats, who don't want a much better process. They want essentially a partisan process.
Sure.
So we haven't done very well at reforming redistricting, notwithstanding the great 50-year, half-century-long effort of good-willed professors. Taking credit for nothing for bad outcomes. That's what I'm doing.
And it appears, Gerry, that this is going on nationwide. Talk about partisan stuff. You got Merrick Garland filing suit on these voter laws. The Constitution clearly states that states decide how their elections are going to be conducted, and somehow he only manages to sue Republican states. So, I mean, this is such a sham.
Well, the Republican states tend to be shutting down or diminishing access to the ballot, making it harder to vote, and also, in this context, messing around with election administration, or trying to, in a very fraud context where a former administration tried to undo the results of an election. So those states are states where the behavior has occurred, or substantially. And I don't think that it's just a matter of Republican states, by the way. I think it's a general matter. But we also have the Voting Rights Act, which the national government has to make sure is followed, and we also have one person, one vote, which is a constitutional principle established by the Supreme Court that has to be followed. So there's plenty of grounds for review of state election administration.
Do you believe that the main issue with the Voting Right Act is identification of the voter? Do you think? See, the way and what I've read, it appears that if there was a provision put in there that people actually had to identify themselves before they voted, that it would have a substantial amount of Republican support, it would pass. The law that's presented there at the moment avoids it almost goes out of its way to avoid having identification of the voter. I mean,
the Voting Rights Act is an act to assure that the racial and language minorities, people who are in racial and language minorities, have access to the ballot and a fair capacity to exercise choice and influence the outcome of elections. That's what the Voting Rights Act is. It's not about it's about access to the ballot. Other elements of the election administration, I'm sure they're subject to other laws in each state. And I identify myself when I vote. I sign in, and so what's the issue of identifying yourself? What state has a problematic practice?
Well, let's just say that in New York State, okay, can you walk into the Board of Elections on the day of the election, tell them that you're Sam Smith, that you live on such and such a street, get an F at the ballot, and vote?
You can vote, but the counting of that vote is contingent on confirming those facts.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So what is the objection then to what I've heard and seen was that the objection seems to be that did you see Bob Dole's quote when he passed?
A lot of Bob Dole's quotes, but I don't know what.
All right, the last one before he died. He's on his deathbed. He said he didn't mind dying because he'd still be able to vote in Chicago.
That's so typical Bob Dole.
Look, there have been. We're getting into a very major issue area. There have been instances of election fraud in American history. The recent allegations of election fraud in the most recent presidential election have, to my knowledge, not been as a massive and consequential set of facts has not been proved. I have seen no evidence that the outcome of the presidential election was the result of election fraud, as has been alleged. And in fact, a lot of the massive, and Mario, you know my political history and so on, my predisposition, but the massive lying that's gone on regarding that election, its outcome, and the processes are the lying is undermining democracy.
Absolutely.
I think our system is at risk to a degree that I have never seen and could not imagine when I was younger.
Yeah.
I don't want to filibuster here, but I used to say, who knows what I remember is what I did, but
I know your feeling.
I used to say to the classes in American government, the elementary class, look, everybody thinks we're such a solid political system, but we're talking about a political system at that time that's only 200 years old. It's a blink of an eye in human history, and we will be challenged again, as we were in the Civil War and other critical moments, to confirm our commitment to democracy and protect it. And this is a moment where we have to do that, and we are really challenged. really, really challenged, and I'm afraid that only a small portion of the country understands that.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that.
In that context, Gerry, what do you think of comparisons of January 6th, yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The first anniversary of January 6th, comparisons with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Do you think the January 6th, you just talked about democracy being under siege. Do you think it rises to that level or those levels?
Well, I think, we're talking about substantively and symbolically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Substantively, there wasn't enough hardware, there weren't enough, what would you call insurrectionists to undo the government. We did see hundreds of people breaking into the Capitol, threatening the lives of elected officials, and trying to block the processes of democracy. So in a way, systemically, these events were more consequential than the ones you named, because we knew we had a clarity in Pearl Harbor that we were attacked by an enemy, and we mobilized in a united way to confront the threat, and we succeeded. 9/11, we had a discrete act that attacked us in our homeland by a foreign enemy. But here we had Americans assaulting their capital to undo their government and put in place God knows what, encouraged and supported by the chief executive of the United States, outgoing chief executive.
Yeah.
And for what from my rough recollection, we've had orderly transfer of power and being very committed to that and proud of that till this moment. And don't underestimate it. It's an internal dynamic and not an external threat. And don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate it.
No, that was the behavior of a banana republic.
Well, that's what I'm used to seeing on television, the risings in the streets in countries.
Yeah, it's happening
that I
right.
regard as less developed and less.
Yeah, it's happening in Kazakhstan right now.
Right.
Hey, it happened across this country last summer.
Yeah.
Talk about rising in the streets.
Right. Now, we've had mass demonstrations, in our lifetime and before.
Yeah.
But not. I don't feel or believe the degree or the fact of fundamental challenge to the system, and it's and look at the polls. Look at the polls on the question of commitment to democracy in the American public. They're frightening. They're frightening.
Absolutely. So we got a couple of questions. So I've got one that I'm very interested in, and I don't know how closely you follow this, but can you offer an opinion on what happened to Letitia James?
What happened to her?
I mean, she was
to be fine to me. Seems to be lively and healthy to me.
Yeah, well.
No, besides that, Gerry.
Yeah, she's healthily prosecuting the Trump family, but the question that I have is, she was, practically preordained as the next governor. I was one of the believers.
Yeah, you were promoting her long before she announced.
The Ulster County Democrats were falling all over themselves. They had a fundraiser. She appeared, and there was an anointing going on. And how did we miss this? That she polled at 22%. And
we didn't miss it. She made a calculation that it was better for her and her career to remain Attorney General, and that there were great opportunities in remaining Attorney General, as you pointed out, politically, given the cases that have been brought and are likely to be brought in the next period of time. And she saw that there were substantial risks in seeking the governorship against the first woman governor in the history of New York, who was incumbent in a broad field. She saw the polls, and she withdrew to fight another day. So there was a political judgment involved. Nothing happened to her. She made, I think, a very smart political judgment, risk-benefit calculation. And she did it relatively early, so it was not maybe as problematic as if she had waited. So I think she, from a political point of view, I think is completely explicable.
Yeah. Do you think there's anybody in the field, and I'm thinking about this Bill de Blasio, a.k.a. de Blasio, has a shot at all? I mean, is this guy in Gaga land? What's going on with him announcing that he's running for governor?
Well, I'll tell you a story.
We'd love to hear one.
The basis of this telling you that is that you can leave the room. Without me noticing, because I'm here and you're there. I was talking to Mario Cuomo one day, years ago, and I made the casual remark that no mayor had ever become governor. Mm. And he said, wrong. Mario Cuomo took great pleasure in professors being wrong, and especially if he could point it out. And I said, well, who? And he said, Grover Cleveland.
You were referring to mayors of New York, weren't you?
Wrong city. That's Buffalo.
Yeah, right.
You said, Professor, you didn't say mayor of New York City. You said mayor.
Yeah. Yep.
The fact is that no former mayor of New York City has ever been governor. There's a great skepticism in the rest of New York State about making a mayor of New York City governor. Then if you add that de Blasio is the mayor we're talking about, it makes it even more unlikely that he becomes governor. Yeah. Now, when you look at the field, I mean, Swazi might be interesting to some people in any other year, but a white Congress member from Long Island, which is a Republican stronghold lately, or at least a Republican running against an upstate, very rare, by the way. A lot of people are making the point that the governor is a woman. Make the further point that the governor is an upstate politician. When did that last happen? But anyway, let's move away from that. An upstate woman, first woman to be governor, governing a crisis, and if she does it incredibly and well, we'll see the budget, what the budget tells us. We'll see what COVID tells us. She will have a good record. She will have been all over the state. She'll have brought money and projects everywhere because it's not a fiscally constrained moment. And very tough.
She's risen to the occasion, would you say?
So far, she's doing very well, in my opinion.
Okay. Interesting. So, the next question, a little closer to home, is in 2022, it is predicted that the Republicans are going to have a banner year in congressional races. Do you have an opinion on the Molinaro-Delgado race? Do you think that that's one of the seats that'll flip?
Well, first, let's understand that in interim years in national politics, the president's party usually loses seats in the House. So we're talking about general phenomena and specific phenomena in this election. And the margin is very close. So the prospect of Republicans winning control in one of the two houses is substantial. And that will make national governance even more fraught. So that's a big question by itself. Regarding the specific election, I think the congressman has done exceedingly well. He's got one of the most rural Democrat districts in the country, and he's made sure his priorities reflect the character and nature of the district. And I know his constituency is very enthusiastic. I know Molinaro since he was in high school, and he was a candidate for governor. He's a credible, very credible candidate for that position. And he's the question is what district, how the districts will be defined. It's not settled yet what the congressional district would look like, and these Democrats are situated to give additional advantage to the Democrat in this case. So Molinaro is a serious candidate, but there was a very serious candidate defeated by Delgado. So too close to call. I'm sorry to say I can't do better than that.
Well, just calling it a close race, Gerry, I think it indicates something of the political landscape. I think I would call it not percentage-wise necessarily, but closer. I think it'll be 2 or 3 points in Delgado's favor at this point. Would you comment on what's going on in Washington and how it might affect this race? AKA
the president has delivered. President has delivered on a part of his agenda. There's a predisposition to say he hasn't delivered at all, which is not correct. But he's having great difficulty, as any person who's not unconscious can tell you, in marshaling his majorities or his majority in the Senate, which is not a majority at all, but a tied situation, relying on the vice president's vote to break ties. And he also has had serious problems in foreign policy, withdrawal of troops, and his troubled the relationship with China and Russia. He's been challenged to reestablish trusted relationships with longtime allies. So I think that the national scene will not support enthusiastic backing of Democratic candidates in the hustings. So I think there's an additional problem rising from that. At the same time, it's hard to know how events will unfold to mobilize voters. It's hard to know. It's beyond me to predict that.
What impact do you think this COVID money, which should be coming out mid-year, photo op after photo op of major construction projects that we probably won't see in our lifetime, but nonetheless, with the Democratic candidate cutting the ribbon is going to happen, AKA buying votes, in my opinion, that's got to have. I mean, to me, that's a considered strategy going forward.
Well, I think the more significant point, Huey, will be how does COVID affecting our day-to-day lives on Election Day?
Mm-hmm.
If we've spent several fortunes and 2 to 3 years trying to contain COVID, and it's still affecting our daily life, and when we go into a store or try to make a trip or ride public transportation or go visit our family in Charleston, South Carolina, that will be the key factor. The spending connected with COVID will be a lesser factor.
Okay.
Because Americans we're all tired already. Even the most enthusiastic supporters, who include me, in understanding that life, liberty, and property are the purposes of government, and protecting life comes first in that list. So having said that, we're tired. I'm tired of wearing a mask. I'm tired of having to be cautious every time I go outside. Can't go. Well, I'm tired of events being canceled that I'd like to go and see and participate in. I don't like Zoom meetings. Mm. Not that I have to go to any anymore. I don't like them.
Nobody asked you.
I don't like teaching remotely, which I don't do, but And I don't think that the life experience. I don't like the diminished effectiveness of our schools. I don't like that our kids don't get to have high school as they ought to be experiencing it, or college as they ought to be experiencing. So I understand the necessity and enthusiastically support the interventions. I don't like them. I'm tired of them. And if everybody comes to the election with that attitude, it's going to have consequences.
I think that it's going to be a tough year at the polls, because I hear it just, in talking to folks in my practice and my employees that they go to the gas station and it costs them $60 to $80 to fill up their tank of gas. They're not too happy. And no matter how much, wages have increased, it's being just destroyed by inflation right now. I talked to
Mario. That's extremely important, especially the point about gas. I heard a commentator the other day who actually made sense, and he said, every time you drive down the street and look at the posted price of fuel at a gas station, you're reminded of inflation.
Yeah.
And you're reminded of the direct impact on you. It's like we turned over every billboard to people, to persons who want to bring the attention of ordinary people to how much more things cost. And that's important. That's going to have consequences. I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's just a daily reminder. I was talking to a businessman the other day who had a contract to he had a $1.2 million contract, and he can't get it involves painting something, and he can't get the paint. He needs 800 gallons of paint, and he cannot get it. He searched. He did a worldwide search, and he can't get the paint. And the guy's sitting.
Oh, Mario, I'll tell you this. All he has to do is forget about wanting to have just one color. But go down to the store and buy whatever they got.
I'll pass that on.
Gerry's a consultant now.
All right, folks. We have Dr. Benjamin from New Paltz on the phone. 331-9255. He can take calls. He can take questions if they're not too complicated, because he's getting old. And we don't want...
You ain't kidding. You ain't kidding.
But,
talk slow.
Yeah.
Talk slowly.
Nice, slow questions. But 331-9255, Kingston Community Radio. We're on the phone with Dr. Gerry Benjamin from New Paltz, a educational icon in our community. And we're picking his brain because you, Reynolds, and I have lost ours. So we need somebody. We need some intelligent conversation, and whenever that happens, we automatically call on Gerry. So, Gerry, I have another question I'd like to throw out to you, and that is, I'm always I'm extremely concerned about the 2022 elections. Everybody seems to think that the Republicans are a shoo-in to take over the House and maybe win a seat or two in the Senate. And my actual concern is people having Trump fatigue, and that the negative effect that this man can possibly have on that potential victory, that potential Republican resurgence. Are you feeling that or seeing any of that? But he's challenging rock solid Republican conservatives who voted to impeach him or voted some way that he wasn't happy with. And everything has just become about Trump and not about the country. And I don't know. I'm a little concerned that people are underestimating the Trump effect on this 2022 election. Do you have any thoughts in that regard?
Well, Mario, you're revealing a partisan bias, which is fine, but any negative effect Trump has on the Republican prospects is okay with me. I was a Republican for a long time, and the failure of Republican leadership to stand up to this I don't know how to describe it, this person inclined towards authoritarian government, is, the great Republican heroes for me, John McCain, Bob Dole, those real conservative heroes were maligned and attacked, and the ones in office backed away from confronting this in the party, and I left the party several years ago because of it.
What do you know now, Gerry?
Negative effect. My observation is that he's sticking to his core constituency and actually has been relatively low visibility so far. And I don't know how purposeful that is. He's a dangerous man. He's a dangerous man.
I agree with you. And that's why I'm asking the question, because I just see this guy snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and I think that these Republicans may be underestimating just how badly Trump plays to the voting public.
Well, I think the prediction, the famous quote, "Rumors of my death are premature." I think that the prediction of Democratic presumptive defeat of the Democrats is simply insufficiently supported. I think it's going to be a very contentious election. I think the margins that in the governing bodies that arise from it nationally are going to be minimal. And I think that a closely divided government is not good for America. We can't take a direction under that circumstance in a Congress that's in a country that's so polarized. So people come away from this conversation thinking that Benjamin is worried. Who cares? That'll probably be the conclusion from listening. But I am, in very many ways, very frightened. Very frightened.
Gerry, you are unique in many respects, and one of them is that you're not only an egghead, but you're a practicing politician for a number of years. If you were advising or managing Mark Molinaro's campaign, following Mario's question, how would you advise him to handle the Trump effect, if you want to use that word, the Trump situation in his campaign?
Well, I've known Mark a long time, but not well. He's always been a sensible center-right politician with an emphasis on the center. But lately he's been moving further to the right, and his approach is to take conservative positions when he can, that appeal to core Trump constituency without embracing Trump. And I think that if I were advising him, I would probably suggest that he do that. So I think he's taking a path in which he'll try to optimize his broad appeal. But he's running against an incumbent who's worked for 2 years or more than 2 years now, to respond to a diverse constituency across a range of issues. So he's got a very difficult challenge. This is not an easy matter. But I think I also think that Molinaro will command the resources because of his run for governor to be a serious challenger who will give the incumbent very substantial run.
So, Gerry, does it concern you that, or have you considered the fact that Delgado's last election against a essentially unknown, completely underfunded, hapless candidate only produced the victory of maybe 6 points? Doesn't that raise some eyebrows in Washington? Doesn't that embolden political action committees, which I ran one, but don't you think that it emboldens them to take a harder look at the Molinaro Delgado race and possibly level that playing field?
I think that it's an attractive. I think he's worked very hard to build the constituency from his first time of his first election. I think that he's done pretty well at that, but he has a district that's demographically and historically closely contested, significantly contested. So, and we also know that congressional seats are at most risk, in the first 2 to 3 elections, maybe first 4 elections. If you can get through 2 re-elections, you get increasingly secure. We also know that the New York State Assembly and Senate can help him a lot in how they draw the lines. So I think that, as I said, it's going to be a close race, but he's certainly well equipped to defend the seat and will have some help. He'll also have a lot of help from the Democrat PACs, the liberal and on the liberal side of the equation. So if I had to say today, I'd say that Delgado will win by a narrow margin. But there's a lot of time till election day.
Yeah, I actually think that that Molinaro will beat him, and my reasoning is when I looked at the numbers, when Molinaro ran against Cuomo, he won every county in the district
except
Ulster. And in Ulster, Delgado won by 19,000 votes, and Cuomo only beat Molinaro by 5,000. So when I do the math, and I say these are people that have already voted for Mark Molinaro throughout the district when he ran for governor, he's got a pretty solid base there. And I know that there's only so much they can do with this district. If they give him more of Dutchess County, the only thing they possibly might be able to do, and it's going to be very difficult, is because he and Delgado live so close that they can't actually move him out of the district without, making it terribly obvious. So I think that if they give him more of Dutchess County, it accrues to Molinaro's advantage. It's virtually impossible to give him less of Dutchess County because he and Delgado live so close together that they would really have to start playing with those lines over there, which may not play well to the.
I understand. I understand completely. But we are talking about an incumbent who's been reinforcing his situation for a long time, who's very popular and who's very talented and capable. And I think your point is well taken, that voters have had a chance to vote for Molinaro, who is, in a sense, a kind of incumbent, too, and that's what makes it a close race.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy to hear that.
I think I'm going to have to go off the phone pretty soon. Are we okay?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes. And how about the Colin Schmidt race against Maloney? Both of those races, by the way, have the Republican challengers one level below Top Gun, which means they could be, based upon polling, they could be projected into top fundraising priority for a Republican candidate in Washington. You know,
for that election, you watch the Hasidic community.
Pardon?
Take a look at watch the Hasidic community in the Maloney election.
He said, watch the Hasidic community.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good point, Jerry. Didn't they vote 59-1 for Hillary one year?
I know the one guy must have been had a vision problem at the election.
You know, there was a Marie Senchi precedent. You might recall that, Jerry, when he was running against the mayor of Binghamton.
Yeah.
And he carried Woodstock, I think, 59-1 as an example, but there was one person who voted for her. And Marie spent the rest of his life looking for that person. Well, Jerry, if you want to sign off, we can wrap up. We want to thank you for coming on.
Well, I don't want to not meet my obligation, but I have some.
No, it's okay, Jerry. We really appreciate your coming on, and we have an open invitation to take advantage of your experience and knowledge at a future date.
I have fun talking to you guys, so
thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And it'll be the same honorarium as last time. Which is
what we get paid.
Say exactly what it's worth.
A verbal thank you.
A warm handshake.
Thanks so much, and listen, enjoy the warm weather.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for contributing, Jerry. Anyway,
that's a good word for it.
Yep, and you know, it's always a delight to speak to him because he's just so knowledgeable. Yeah. You know, about everything. And his breadth and scope of you know, you and I like to talk politics. We spend half of our life doing that. It's a
avocation.
Yes, and in his case, this man is deeply studied. He really gets into the weeds. He understands it from an academic perspective, which is always great to have. Anyway, so going forward, let's hope this COVID thing can finally run out of gas because it's getting just a little depressing to not be able to do anything. I haven't been in.
I'm starting to think that the numbers are askew a little bit. It's just like you said, we're the only county in the whole state that's on state of emergency.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and the numbers. I mean, I don't know. That's what I was saying. I'm not sure what the state of emergency was intended to do, but
scare people.
But
yeah. Scare people.
It's not accomplishing anything.
It sure isn't, and it's hurting business owners too.
We're setting records every day.
Yeah.
With new cases, and New York State's like running 70,000, 80,000 new cases a day.
I just don't even see that. A lot of people are. A lot of people are vaccinated. And
well, this happened to a friend of mine. He went to the emergency room because he hurt his finger at work. He's a carpenter. He bangs his finger up or whatever. He goes to the emergency room. The woman says to him, well, okay, you're here. I got to take a COVID test. They take a COVID test. The guy's positive. He didn't have one symptom.
Yeah, I don't even.
He's positive, and all of a sudden, they're tracking down every one of his contacts.
We lost 4 lions in between 2020 and the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. 4 lions we lost. None of them had COVID at the time. Family members were all with them. All on their death certificates said they died of COVID-19. One of them is actually fighting the hospital in Hackensack. I don't want to say his name, but he's pissed because his wife. Now his wife had everything under the sun: rheumatoid arthritis, dementia. She was sick from many, many things. She wasn't sick from COVID.
Yeah.
But on her death certificate it says she died from COVID-19.
Wow.
So it's ridiculous, man. So I don't know if they're trying to do it to scare us. Be that as it may. You know, and now I'm reading right here online, You can have all your shots and boosters and everything, take a test. You could have COVID, and it might not even come up that you're positive for it. So it's like, it doesn't even make sense.
You know, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how reliable the testing is. I think we're getting a lot of false positives, some false negatives. You know, look, let's face it, it's especially if it's one of those home test kits.
I haven't taken one of those.
There can be multiple ways that you could screw it up if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
You're dependent on the person who's doing it to be able to follow the instructions.
Right.
And there are 4 or 5 steps that you have. You remember?
Yeah, I took the test.
Yeah, when I was traveling back and forth to Florida from New York, back and forth during the pandemic at its height, I had to take a test to fly back into New York, have a negative test to return into New York. So I was I was doing it in Florida, and nurses and doctors were administering, but they were the rapid test where you could find out, 20 minutes later if you were, positive or negative.
Yep.
I had never taken any other tests but the rapid ones, and obviously I'd never tested positive. But anyway, what do you guys got on tap for the weekend?
Well, I'm battling with Genesis of Goshen to try and get my car fixed up so I can.
You guys will be here in 2 weeks?
We'll definitely. It looks like I'm.
God willing.
Yeah, it looks like I'm still going to be here because they're not going to get my car part until the 20th.
Yeah, your car's only got 1,400 miles on it. Why don't you say, hey, I want a new one? I spent all this money on a car.
They don't have a new one.
Oh, they don't have another one.
When we went down there, they were offloading this car, and it was the only one.
The SUV.
An SUV, and was the only one that wasn't spoken for.
Oh God, yeah.
And when I said to the guy, "Can you do anything on the price?" he said to me, "Well, we already did. We're the only dealer that's not charging over sticker." And then they gave me a $500 discount for being a veteran.
Great.
Which was nice.
Yeah.
So I got $500 off on a.
But now you got a car you can't drive for a month.
And that was the thing.
Yeah.
They can't get the part. I told them I thought they just should.
I know you're supposed to be sitting in the sun right now drinking a margarita.
Well,
or something to that line of that.
Something to that effect. Yeah. I'd be playing a little pickleball.
Yeah, or something.
A little golf.
Mahjong, I don't know.
Yeah, Mahjong. I take.
All right, well, we're out of time. Another great show today, guys. Thank you. We'll be back on Monday with Medical Monday. You two have a great. Everybody, listeners, have a great weekend.
All righty. Thank you.